fear and a lot of their stress. And obviously if you're able to do that, you're able to protect the other children as well, which is one of like our major concerns, and we would have had parent complaints all the time as well around that. And then it probably with that particular child as well, with the global developmental delay, like we felt there wasn't really a huge amount of information out there about it. For us, it just seemed to be something that was kind of like, he was too young to be diagnosed with anything else, so we'll just say that it's global developmental delay. Developmental delay.
Until we can.
Yeah, until like he's 5 and they can test him for autism or whatever, or an intellectual disability or whatever. I think it's kind of like a stepping stone to something else. So what they would have said to us was, sometimes children catch up and sometimes they don't. If they don't, they're diagnosed with an intellectual disability. So for us, the level of information around global developmental delay, specific strategies to use for him, were very limited. So I suppose because he hadn't started any therapy, he hadn't started speech and language, he hadn't started occupational therapy or anything like that, or psychological therapy or anything, like we didn't really have a lot of information. We were just kind of expected to hold him until he moved on to primary school, and that's when he would get the support.
I suppose, and do you think that the needs of all children can or should be catered for in mainstream early year settings?
Mm-hmm. So do you
think they can be met
currently? I suppose there is. We have a bit of experience with AIM now. So in this particular service, we have a child who has mild cerebral palsy, and there would be concerns around his his own safety, because he struggles to keep his balance and things like that, and then around his aggression as well. So we have been awarded level 7. And that has helped, because you do have that extra body in the room, and I think it's better for everybody. So because we have the extra person in the room, he's been able to be catered for, and then the other children have their key worker that, I mean, he would be included in the group, but a lot of the time he opts out of whatever the whole group are doing. So we have then a person that will sit with him, follow his interests, try to challenge him on what his kind of play is, while you have your key worker for the other children.
So could you just tell me a little bit more about AIM Level 7 and how you went about that?
Okay, so I suppose, well, obviously we know about it just from the county childcare committees and that, and we had been very pessimistic in terms of whether we would get level 7, because we had heard of anecdotal kind of stories about people not getting it for children and that kind of thing. So we just decided we'd just go ahead, we'd apply. So the way it works is it's an online form. You fill out kind of different aspects of the child's development, and you give like a score, I suppose. So it'd be like never, hardly ever, sometimes, always, or whatever. It has to be filled out with the parent. So we would find it very difficult to give stuff to the parent to bring home to look at, and for them to bring it back. It would take weeks upon weeks. So what we did was we did the form, we sat with the parent in just a really quick meeting, went through it with her. She had little parts that she felt maybe we had scored him too low, like not low, but you know, she had felt that he was doing things that maybe at home that we hadn't seen. So we changed those few bits, and then we put it in, and then that was before Christmas, and we got a phone call in the first week of January probably, from an earlier specialist from AIM, and she was coming out to visit within the next kind of week and a half. She came out to visit, she saw the child, and then it was probably about another week or 2 weeks, and she phoned us to say that we had been awarded the level 7.
And what does the level 7 give that child?
So they give you funding. So they'll tell you like for what hour, how many hours per week that they'll give you funding for, and then you have to go and find a person.
Okay, so you hire additional.
Yeah. They do give you options though. So I know one of our other services, they have kept their ratios lower. Okay. So they have put that funding towards the loss that they're taking by keeping their ratios lower.
Okay.
And you can also use it to increase additional staff's hours.
Okay. Okay.
So like say for example here we have a manager who's now in ratio.
Okay.
And she works with that. Well, she works with all the children, but she's that for that purpose. And she has extra hours then in the afternoon time that she works.
And how would the funding equate to say his full-time hours here? Like would he have?
So he
part-time? Or
so he has 4. So he has 4 hours a day. So he's 20 hours a week, and they only fund for 15 hours.
So 15 out of 20.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think that's the max that you can get because it's just for children on the ECHI scheme.
Okay. So do you think, just to kind of summarise it, do you think mainstream settings are suitable for all children, or do you think there is still a place in society for, like we have special schools, so do you think there's a place in society for special early years settings?
I suppose, like, you're kind of torn a little bit because I have, heard of like special schools for autism.
Sorry, Danny.
Where they've so much support and they've people that are specifically trained and like I've heard really good things. But then I suppose when you're thinking about like inclusion and maybe breaking down those kind of like stigmas around disability, I think I would prefer to see children being able to attend mainstream preschools, mainstream schools, and be friends with children who have, like, I suppose, typically developing, children. And that, like, a typically developing child can have a friend who has an additional need or has a special need or whatever. I don't know about, kind of seems like a bit of an old way of doing things by segregating people who are different.
So how do you think we could get there? How do you think we could support every child?
Well, I think like funding into that kind of thing. Funding for training, funding for staff, funding for equipment, like materials that are specific for each child and what their needs are.
Would you say then your attitude has changed over the course of your experience? Since you left college to now, do you think you would have a different outlook on
I suppose
support a child?
Yeah, I'd probably be a bit more, I suppose I was very optimistic leaving college, and I would have thought like, oh yeah, everybody is going to, like, we're not going to, the sector is funded fine and we're going to,
So do you think then you'd put that down to your experience or to, say, your role in a service that has opened your eyes more to that?
No, I'd say I'd put it down to my experience, so the things that I've kind of come across over the years, and probably more to do with the difficulties that I've come into or I've experienced over the years.
And how they have made you feel?
I suppose like that child that I was talking about earlier with the global developmental delay, like that would have affected me very would have affected me personally. Like, you feel like that you're kind of failing that child by, and obviously there's nothing that you can do about it because there's only so much that you can do, but like, and it would make you very angry as well, that there is nobody else out there to help. I mean, I don't know, I could probably have a list of 20 people that we would have phoned, between politicians to voluntary groups to, HSE people or whatever, so.
To no response.
Yes, and I suppose there's a sense of helplessness as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to move on to